I want you to think about this. Right now, there are children in our society, and indeed all over the world, of all identities, that are being taught that sketchy shit is cool. They aren't being told to knock it off with the sketchy shit. They are being told to praise the sketchy shit. And yet, can society exist if it is devoted to praising sketchy shit? If it can exist that way, can it allow people to live well and happily? Unfortunately, telling people to knock it off with the sketchy shit is essentially problematic. After all, the appropriate audience for the message are the people that do sketchy shit. They probably think that sketchy shit is cool, praise it, and they are liable to react in a way that is, well, sketchy. But that only means that our task is incredibly difficult, not that it is impossible. They must be approached with language that they understand, and we must have knowledge of what we mean by sketchy shit. Let's begin by discussing what someone might be likely to say if they were to be asked what they think sketchy shit is, if they were to say anything at all. Someone is most likely to say that sketchy shit is something that someone does that they wouldn't want to be seen doing, especially seen by some sort of law enforcement. Adequate though this view seems to be, it doesn't really get to the heart of the matter. What if you lived in a society where everything goes? What if no one was ashamed to be seen doing anything? Would there then be no sketchy shit? And furthermore, aren't there things that it is fine that you do that you don't really want society literally watching while you do them? I'm thinking of private things like going to the restroom, having sex, listening to Metallica, etc. Clearly, then, we are in need of another conception of sketchy shit. The question of sketchy shit seems to be a question regarding freedom, or in particular, what is it that is right that we do as distinguished from what is it that we should be free to do? We certainly want to live in a society that is free enough that people will be able to do sketchy shit. But in order for us to live in such a society, enough people need to choose to not do sketchy shit. This points us to the classical view and its two conceptions of freedom: freedom as license and freedom as a result of virtue. License is a term that is not used much in this context anymore. It refers to the freedom to do anything, or, we are tempted to say, anything that we want to do. Freedom as virtue, on the other hand, implies that society has inherent value. Montesquieu formulated the classical view nicely when he said that in a popular state there must be an additional spring, which is virtue. At this point, it may not seem clear what virtue is, but we can actually say quite a lot. Virtue is what is needed for a free society. Self-rule is practically a synonym for virtue. People can't govern themselves if they aren't capable of governing themselves. Consider an example. In 1977, the Supreme Court ruled that the Nazis had to be allowed to march in Skokie, Illinois, a city that they picked because it had a bunch of Holocaust survivors. Now, they were allowed to do this because in this country we have freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, etc. But if too many people in our country become Nazis, we would not have those freedoms. That is what is meant by virtue is what is needed for a free society. From these considerations, we can arrive at our second formulation of sketchy shit. Sketchy shit is freedom as license minus freedom as virtue. Out of everything that you can, or perhaps want to do, sketchy shit is what remains when you subtract everything that you do that is compatible with free society. In fact, all freedom is the result of virtue in one way or another. If someone has license, like Nazis in America, then it is because they inherited that situation from some sort of great people that established some sort of system that enables license. Like I said, we believe that in a free society, people should be free to do sketchy shit. License types merely mooch off the virtuous. Alright, so now that we have a few conceptions of sketchy shit, let's talk about telling people to knock it off. First of all, if the message doesn't apply to you, then the message doesn't apply to you. It only applies to the people that should knock it off. I believe that there is sketchy shit that could and should be knocked off. Even though people think that different things are sketchy, I still have to believe that some people would admit, even if only to themselves, that they do sketchy shit, and I would like for them to consider knocking it off. Second, although I am satisfied to phrase it generally as knock it off, I do not mean knock it off radically. Like I've said, I want to live in a free society, and a free society will allow people to do sketchy shit. The issue is the threshold. Just as there cannot be a free society if people do too much sketchy shit, so too a person cannot live freely in free society if they do too much sketchy shit. Even if they get away with it, such people and societies are ruled by their passions. Third, there's the objection, popularly expressed as, I didn't choose the thug life chose me. This is sort of what I was referring to when I mentioned the fact that children all over the world are being taught that sketchy shit is cool. There are people that do sketchy shit like I went to the dentist or learned to play piano. These are especially the people that need to be told to knock it off. Along with knock it off, there are two things that need to be said to these people. First, we need to say that some people need to be satisfied that the best they can do without doing sketchy shit may not improve their own lives that much, but rather that they should hope to provide better opportunities for their children. They may not improve their own lives that much, but they can teach their children that sketchy shit isn't cool. The issue is that people need to be in a position where they can say no to sketchy shit. I have sometimes called this values privilege. I would also say that even if virtue doesn't make you wealthy, at least you can better bear your poverty if you don't do too much sketchy shit. Second, we will quote Socrates from Plato's Gorgias that he'd rather be a victim of a tyrant than be a tyrant, although he'd rather be neither. I know, that's easy for you to say, right? Well, actually, this from Socrates provides much of the rationale for the necessity of telling people to knock it off with the sketchy shit, since it's such dangerous business. I'd rather be a victim of a tyrant than be a tyrant. Now, for Socrates, and for classical thought in general, tyranny was the condition of being ruled by your passions, as opposed to by relatively sober reason. Tyranny is essentially a psychological condition. The only kind of freedom the tyrant can have is the freedom among a group of thieves. The tyrant cannot live well. Because of considerations like these, it is more noble to be a victim of a tyrant than to be a tyrant. In the Gorgias, Socrates says that you should denounce your family members and friends that do wrong, that you should bring their misdeeds to the light of day. I would say that there is an intermediate step. You can tell them to knock it off with the sketchy shit. Alright, let's begin to wrap this up. I figure the response that I will get when I say that people ought to knock it off with the sketchy shit is somewhat similar to the response that you get when you suggest that rich people that want higher taxes should take it upon themselves to pay more taxes, since there is no law preventing overpaying taxes. In both cases, a given person doing so seems entirely trivial. If someone knocked it off with the sketchy shit, that person would likely be abused because of the society that they live in. And yet there is probably no more important message, for our society especially, but indeed for all societies for all time, than knock it off with the sketchy shit. Knock it off. It is better to be a victim of a tyrant than to be a tyrant. Take one for the team if you have to. Team justice. Team justitarianism. It may be that the best you will do is provide better opportunities for your children. How life and society work is not up to us, but it is up to us to try to live our lives well. Please help me spread this message. Tell people why you want them to knock it off. This explanation might have been a little highbrow, And being a cis, straight, white male, I don't really have the ideal identity to tell everyone to knock it off that needs to be told to do so. Please write about it in blogs, post on Twitter or Facebook, make your own YouTube video, tell people in person. You may have a different explanation for what sketchy shit is and or why people should knock it off than I do. Please share it. I want to hear it. Our society, indeed modern society generally, is in a precarious enough situation. I am pretty sure this is one of the main messages it needs to hear. Make people defend sketchy shit if they won't tell people to knock it off. I'm sure there are plenty of modern Thrasymachus out there, but we need to tell them what Socrates told them 2,500 years ago in Athens. Knock it off with the sketchy shit.